everyone, I'm Dominic.
Hi.
I graduated 2.5 years ago and I double majored in social work and sociology. So I was working as a direct practitioner in the FSC setting up to the start of the year. I've since shifted internally to actually working in service development and innovation. So it's actually a melting pot of skill sets relating to research, program development and evaluation, and lots of stakeholder engagement. Yeah, so how about you?
I'm Lay Lin, and I work as a principal medical social worker with the Institute of Mental Health. In my about 30 years of work in social work, I have served with 2 family service centers and 3 tertiary medical institutions. Currently, I conduct systemic psychotherapy in IMH, and I'm also the education lead in my department. I did more sociology and social work while in undergrad days, and I'm here to share how these 2 majors have worked for me.
Thanks, Lay Lin and Dominic. I'm Grace. I graduated from NUS in Sociology and Southeast Asian Studies, but I went on to do a graduate diploma in social work. So I started my career in MSF, Ministry of Social and Family Development, first as a probation officer and now as a principal social worker at the Office of the Director General of Social Welfare. Yeah. So Dominic, you have been, you're probably the youngest among us, right? How is it like in NUS studying sociology and social work?
There's actually so much to say, but I think it's actually best encapsulated through a metaphor of the convergence of 2 rivers. Right? So at first glance, social work and sociology appeared to be very distinct. But there are evidently so many points of synergies, and as I went through the education, it found a lot of points that actually there was a lot of synergizing. So the studying experience definitely required 2 distinct frames of thinking, right? So maybe I can share an example. I remember that I was going from back-to-back tutorials, and the first one was a soci tutorial, and we were discussing about civil society in the midst of public, the people, and the private sector. So it's very much more macro thinking. And then afterwards, back-to-back, I immediately went to a social work tutorial where we were talking about the expression of empathy through micro skills. So both studied the social through very different lenses and requires shifting between these 2 very distinct frames. But I really enjoyed it. And it was such a great experience throughout.
It's great to know that you have a really good learning experience, Dominic. Could you share with us how did the different theoretical, similar theoretical perspectives in social work and sociology, how did it work for you when you were a student and now as a social worker?
So one of the first things that we learn in sociology is C. Wright Mill's sociological imagination, where it is connecting between personal challenges and larger social issues. On the other hand, social work emphasizes, I think, what we all know as the person in environment as a conceptual framework. So I see these 2 concepts to be incredibly complementary. So personally, studying sociology for me actually honed my analytical and diagnostic skills. Whereas for social work, it actually helped me in designing systematic, empathic, and theoretical interventions. And put together, when you bring both of them, you can better analyze, diagnose, and intervene.
Wow, that's so true. So what are some of the challenges you faced when you did both social work and sociology?
I alluded to it in my previous response, where I shared on toggling between these 2 frames of thinking, right? Very much contrasting, but somehow complementary. But maybe let me share this more from a social work perspective. So one of the things I really appreciated studying social work is the incredibly personal, reflective, and introspective experience. So when you place this back-to-back with a sociology class, as I was mentioning previously, it becomes challenging because you have to switch frames, right? So it wasn't only the integration of the course materials, but sometimes the experience can be very, very stark. But while challenging, it was also really meaningful because I feel like you get the opportunity to see the same world through 2 lenses. And that was just something extremely unique, right? That sociology and social work brings. So Grace, I understand that you studied a graduate diploma in social work. What inspired you to do so?
So I was working in probation service at that time, and I had colleagues who were doing social work, who did social work, and I could see that the knowledge that they learned in social work helped them in their work substantially, in the way that they interacted with the offenders and their families, in the way they implemented programs. So I felt that maybe I wanted to be more effective in impactful in my work. So I decided then to study the graduate diploma in social work. Yeah.
So Grace, you have had a wide exposure in the social work sector. And could you share with us how has these both majors opened doors for you?
SOCI helped me to get open doors for me to do policy work, which I enjoy very much. But to be an effective policy officer, we need to have a direct experience on the ground to understand really the challenges of policy implementations, the impact of policies on not just the clients, but also the workers and the organizations. So these things are essential, really, to be a really good policy officer. And I think therefore social work gave me that opportunity to work with people. It helped me to see firsthand the issues that they face. Yeah. So these things were very necessary because the language it gave me to speak to both policymakers as well as practitioners helped me substantially. Yep. And I think it also allowed my bosses I became more versatile for my bosses to deploy me. Yeah, and of course, then I added value to the team because I brought with myself different lenses. Yeah.
So on that topic, I'm actually really curious. Like, how do you utilize the sociological and social work theories in policy work?
Okay, so take for example, social change, right? So sociology gave me concepts like social constructs, and it helped me to see that societies, cultures, and peoples perceive things differently. Yeah. As an onlooker, when I observe societies, I can see that it can change over time. It helped me appreciate that there are a lot of different worldviews and perspectives of things. It challenged me to relook at how social interactions, social roles, social behavior is different with different people. And social work helped me reminded me of the need to be attending in my behavior, to be empowering, to pace with the clients and the families, right? And to consider the cultural needs, even when I'm pushing boundaries with them. So the ecological perspectives and systems theory, which social work teaches me, reminds me that I need to attend to the micro and meso agents of change, even when I'm looking at the macro level. So take, for example, the role of women, right? So sociology made me question what is an accepted role of the woman in society, in the household, right? And I realized that actually it's a cultural construct, right, which can change over time. Yeah. But when I work with families, I cannot just come and tell you, oh, that's a cultural construct. I have to pace with them, right? I have to pace with the children, the women, the men, even when I'm helping them to understand that, maybe they can see the roles a bit differently. So how about you, Lay Lin? You've been a practitioner for many years. What opportunities have studying these two majors worked for you?
Sociology has heightened my understanding of how systems in the country and on a global level interrelate. To be effective, social workers would need to be able to analyze the impact of legislation, political, economic, and social systems on our people. In my work as a social worker, I've seen my clients experience the impact of migration, the plight of foreign brides, the changing demography, the changing demography, and of late, how mental health issues have been pushed to the front with the recent COVID pandemic. It is important for social workers to be able to appreciate, the impact of these macro issues on our people and how our people respond to these macro issues. And it is from there that we could co-create novel ways in which people can manage these challenges. And it is important for social workers to be able to keep the profession relevant. Yeah. As a social worker, I also learned to be reflective and even self-reflexive. And by this, I mean that we also learn to take a meta perspective, coming out of ourselves and to take a critical approach to our professional roles, and also to continually ensure that our fellow professionals are properly developed. In the last decade, I have an opportunity to work with my colleagues in the Singapore Association of Social Workers and the Ministry of Health for us to identify training and career pathways and supervision guidelines for our fraternity.
Like, wow, Lay Lin, I mean, you covered the various subsystems and you moved over to even just the personal self and the associations that you ended up working with. I'm curious, so what about your interacting with service users and stakeholders? So how would you actually apply your social work and sociological knowledge in those areas?
As a social work student majoring in social work and sociology, I recall many years ago that I read sociology of the family, sociology of religions, social psychology, and of sociology of education. And I learned how all these social systems influence cultural beliefs, norms, and roles. All these social systems can also contribute to social inequities in the areas of poverty, in the areas of domestic violence, in the areas of social alienation that is contributed by a non-inclusive society. I am particularly interested in the area of domestic violence. And in domestic violence, as a social worker, my role is to facilitate my clients to be aware of their vulnerabilities, to understand the family relationships, and also to help them to co-construct their social worlds in ways in which they could have more effective alternatives in their functioning. Yeah. I also believe as a social worker, like what you both mentioned, the importance of social systems collaboration, working with stakeholders and ensuring workflows that work in the best interest of our clients.
That's amazing. I think you've really provided social work in a nutshell. And I'm just curious, and so what advice would you actually give to students thinking about studying both social work and sociology?
I would like to encourage sociology students to do social work and social work students to do sociology. And as you talk about these conversions, there is a lot of complementary. And I recently came across this journal article in qualitative social work. The journal is called Qualitative Social Work. And in there, Professor Yen Shaw resurfaces this concept called sociological social work. By sociological social work, Professor Shaw says that the social worker consciously works within the self-identity that is sociological and gives a sociological shape to social work. Oh, and yes, as we come towards the end of our conversation, let's not miss out how you both actually integrate the two majors into your work and into your life.
Okay, so for me, I think that the two frames of thinking that I mentioned just now is ever developing. So this whole micro space and this macro space, when they constantly interact, they give you very different reflections, very different lenses towards seeing the social issues that we actually all face. And in my current role, I'm actually supporting efforts to address these social issues at a broader level beyond the client-worker relationship. And it's using that analytical mindset, that diagnostic ability, and the intervention skill sets that I've picked up from both sociology and social work. Yeah, and another thing that I'm actually doing is co-hosting a podcast where we have conversations regarding social work. Yeah, and to some degree, I think this was started also because I wanted to connect the private to the public, where I believe that conversations can inspire further thought and dialogue. And conversations can also impact multiple levels in society. In doing so, I hope that it will bring constructive steps towards our sector. What about you, Grace?
Well, I do policy work. So for me in policy work, I think I have come to realize that I cannot expect immediate outcomes. And I'm comfortable with the slow change in things. I've learned to recognize that things change really over time, and we need to pace with society. Yeah. So while we put in place systems and policies to nudge people in a certain direction, we just need to follow along and have them accept the changes that comes. Yeah. So in the midst of advocating for social injustice, which is very much social work, I realized that there are many perspectives to take, and there is really no one way of doing things, which is sociological. Yeah.
Yeah, wow, what a great time hearing from yourself, Lay Lin, and from yourself, Grace. It's such a good time for me to be able to hear from both of you who have been so experienced within the sector.
Thank you very much to Dominic and Lay Lin. I think it's been really fruitful time with this morning with two of you.
Me too. Thank you.
Thank you.